George Tooker's eerie and captivating paintings took on art's biggest themes of desire, death, religion, and grief. As an openly gay artist working in the 1950s, Tooker railed against the established status quo in both his life and art, with his work focusing primarily on critiquing the isolation and disaffection prevalent in an increasingly capitalist and bureaucratic world. His works combined qualities of surrealist dreamscapes, political commentary, and Renaissance painting techniques to create disturbing, yet beautiful, images of everyday human struggles. George Tooker, a vocal opponent of capitalism and government authority, vividly captured the impact of the Depression on city life. He portrayed how the crushing weight of government red tape and bureaucracy stripped people of their individuality, leaving them more desperate and trapped by the very systems meant to support them. Karl Marx's theory of alienation, introduced in 1932, explains how people become disconnected from their own essence and from one another due to the capitalist system and the divisions within social classes. Tooker, a committed communist, consistently depicted this alienation in his art. His works frequently feature individuals with either blank or identical faces, often isolated and devoid of expression, portraying them as mere cogs in the machinery of employment or government. In this video we will take a look at Tooker's life and dive into some of his most celebrated works. George Tooker was born on August 5, 1920, in Brooklyn, New York, to George Clare Tooker and Anela Montejo Rora. He grew up with one sister, Mary, in a family with a diverse cultural background. His father was of English and French descent, while his mother had German, English, and Spanish-Cuban roots. The Tooker family lived in Brooklyn until George was 7, after which they moved to Bellport, Long Island. Raised in the Episcopal Church, Tooker's upbringing was solidly middle class. Tooker developed an early interest in art, beginning painting lessons at the age of 7 under the guidance of Malcolm Fraser, a family friend and professional artist known for his work in the Barbizon style. Tooker later described Fraser as a significant early influence, noting that Fraser's encouragement reinforced his desire to become an artist. During his time at Phillips Academy in Andover, Massachusetts, Tooker devoted himself to poetry and painting, even though these pursuits were not part of the academic curriculum. He often gave away his artwork from a small shop in Bellport, offering support to those affected by the Great Depression. His visits to nearby towns struggling during this period heightened his sense of social responsibility, and his middle-class background, combined with his multicultural heritage, fostered a deep political awareness. This led to a growing socialist inclination and a critical view of the prevailing societal and economic conditions. In 1938, Tooker enrolled at Harvard University, where he earned a degree in English in 1942. Although he didn't formally study art at Harvard, he spent considerable time at the Fogg Art Museum, immersing himself in medieval and Renaissance paintings. This experience had a lasting impact on his artistic development, with Tooker later citing Renaissance masters as key influences on his style. While at Harvard, he also joined the Young Communist League, embracing the liberal political ideas he had encountered earlier at Phillips Academy. After graduation, Tooker entered a U.S. Marine Corps training program, but he was discharged due to ulcerative colitis. Although the U.S. Army had recently decriminalized homosexuality in 1942, Tooker, who was openly gay, mentioned that he never disclosed his sexual orientation during his time in the Marine Corps, as it was never brought up. After recovering from colitis, Tooker enrolled at the Art Students League in New York City, where he studied from 1943 to 1945. There, he trained under the guidance of American painter Reginald Marsh, as well as Kenneth Hayes Miller and Harry Sternberg, both prominent instructors at the League. During this time, Tooker served as a monitor in one of Marsh's classes, which led him to meet a 16-year-old Paul Cadmus. Cadmus became not only Tooker's lover but also a lifelong friend and a significant artistic influence. Cadmus was known for his satirical and provocative depictions of high society, often featuring scandalous images of sailors, sex workers, and sensitive portrayals of male nudes. Tooker resonated deeply with Cadmus's liberal views and subversive narratives of New York life, integrating these themes into his own work. It was also during this period that Tooker befriended artist Jared French, who had previously been both a lover and mentor to Cadmus. French, along with Cadmus, encouraged Tooker to experiment with egg tempera, a painting technique using egg yolk mixed with pigment, which became Tooker's primary medium. Through these relationships, Tooker became part of a broader circle of artists, writers, dancers, and composers, including figures like W. H. Auden, Monroe Wheeler, and Christopher Isherwood. While in New York, Tooker was exposed to urban realism, also known as the Ashcan School or the Eight, a movement that had gained prominence in the early 20th century by portraying the lives of ordinary people. Although earlier works in this style often overlooked the hardships of the Depression era, artists like Kenneth Hayes Miller and others in the 1940s began to depict the urban struggle more realistically, infusing urban realism with greater social consciousness. Tooker, with his radical egalitarian beliefs, drew upon this tradition to create art that offered political and social commentary, while also incorporating elements of spirituality and abstraction. In 1946, Tooker was included in Dorothy Miller's exhibition, 14 Americans, at the Museum of Modern Art, MoMA, in New York, which had a major effect on his career. He then spent 6 months traveling with Cadmus in Europe in 1949, where he was exposed to a plethora of artists and their styles. In Paris, he visited the Louvre and became fascinated with the work of French neoclassical painter Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres. He was especially captivated by the Renaissance masters and their techniques, such as Duccio, Mantegna, Botticelli, Bellini, Bronzino and Giotto. This exposure had an extremely significant impact on Tooker, and elements of Renaissance composition and technique can be seen in his work. After his return, Tooker applied the combined influence of Cadmus' contemporary exposé, urban realism's portrayal of the everyday, and the technique of the Renaissance masters to produce art of his own unique style. Tooker's socially provocative paintings depicted images of the prosaic, which he abstracted into unsettling, almost dystopian scenes. They recognized and deconstructed socially appropriate behavior and identification. As an openly gay man, Tooker's work during his mature period is rife with commentary about identity during the mid-20th century. Specifically, they provide a leftist illumination about sexuality as a national security issue predating the civil rights movement. Many of his artworks during this time feature an element of surveillance, which was especially significant to members of the LGBTQ community during this time, because of the shifting of stereotypes and violence toward the community. He studied and praised the works of social realist painters David Alfaro Siqueiros, Diego Rivera, and José Clemente Orozco, and applied a similar surrealist twists in his works. He took part in the Symbolic Realism exhibition in 1950, organized by writer and connoisseur Lincoln Kirstein, who became a fervent supporter of Tooker's work throughout his career. Tooker's work in this exhibition led to his categorization as a magic realist, as it incorporated surrealist and spiritual elements within a realist setting. However, Tooker never personally identified with this such categorization, saying of both symbolic and magic realism, "Oh, I hate those terms." In the same year, he produced one of his most famous works, Subway, 1950, which was procured by the Whitney Museum of American Art. He then had his first solo exhibition at the Edwin Hewitt Gallery. During the late 1950s, after becoming increasingly frustrated with urban life, Tooker and his then partner, painter and civil rights activist, William Christopher, began building a house in Hartland, Vermont, where they permanently relocated in 1960. Although no longer living in New York, Tooker was an active member of the civil rights movement. In 1965, he marched alongside Martin Luther King in Selma, Alabama. This continued advocating for community and justice for the subjugated was reflected in his artwork, which continued to constantly challenge preconceived norms about sexuality, race, and class. Tooker also taught at the Art Students League from 1965 to 1968, which required regular trips to New York. In 1968, Tooker was elected to the National Academy of Design, an honorary arts organization. However, in 1968, Tooker and Christopher started to spend winters in Spain as an escape from the Vermont weather. They purchased an apartment in Malaga, Spain in 1968, which they spent long periods of time in, and that Tooker had for decades following. After Christopher's death in 1973, Tooker experienced a profound personal crisis that led him to become increasingly isolated and introspective. This period of turmoil deepened his spirituality, culminating in his conversion to Roman Catholicism in 1976. He joined the St. Francis of Assisi Church in Windsor, Vermont, where his growing connection with his faith began to heavily influence his artwork. During this time, his work shifted from depicting public, urban scenes to more intimate, personal subjects infused with a deep sense of spirituality. His art also took on a more sentimental tone, often exploring the tenderness of human relationships. One notable example is his creation of the altarpiece for the St. Francis of Assisi Church, titled The Seven Sacraments, 1980, which consists of 7 panels portraying a Catholic procession. Despite being openly gay, Tooker did not feel the need to reconcile his sexuality with his religious beliefs, choosing instead to live a celibate life after Christopher's passing. Although he withdrew from the public art scene, Tooker continued to paint privately in his Vermont studio. He re-emerged briefly with his first solo exhibition in 1998 at the D.C. Moore Gallery. Tooker remained active in his art until the mid-2000s, passing away on March 27, 2011, from kidney failure at his Vermont home at the age of 90. Tooker is celebrated as a leading figure in modern American painting and was honored with the National Medal of Arts in 2007 by President George W. Bush. He played a pivotal role in shaping American magic realism and social realism, standing alongside artists like Paul Cadmus. While his work diverged from that of abstract expressionists like Mark Rothko and Jackson Pollock, they shared certain aspects of abstract figuration and developed concurrently, both leaving a significant impact on postmodern art. Tooker's influence also extends to postmodernism, particularly through his steadfast use of egg tempera, a Renaissance technique, to create contemporary paintings filled with social critique. This blend of classical technique with modern political and transcendental themes solidified his reputation as an artist who forged his own path. In addition, Tooker is an enduring icon for the LGBTQIA community, being an openly gay artist in the mid-20th century, a time when such openness was rare. His commitment to justice and his challenge to societal norms through his art made his work a powerful voice for the oppressed. His paintings, which continue to resonate today, capture the anxieties and alienations of modern life, laying the groundwork for using art as a tool to question and critique contemporary society. This legacy has profoundly influenced the role of art in the modern world. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe and leave your comments below. Don't forget to watch our videos on Paul Cadmus and Jared French. Thanks for watching.